Hey, I'm Vince with Pathogen. I want to talk about chemical residues from disinfectant. A lot of people don't realize that disinfectants we use, most of them leave some type of residue, and that can be concerning if it's like a leather or cloth, glass, plexiglass. You don't want to have prolonged residue left on there. It could stain, especially some of the plexiglass and some of the porous materials that we have around our work areas and home. First you have the residues that are obviously visible. If you disinfect a window, for example, and I do sampling all the time to see this or to prove it with a particular chemical. If you spray it on a window and you let it dry, that's the residue you're going to see. Sure, a lot of chemicals you spray, let set 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and then you wipe away. You're still leaving a residue. It might be very hard to see, or even at the micron level, using a microscope. I've seen research development companies use electron microscopes to show residue, but even more importantly, pathogens that are left behind that are deeply seated in the porous materials that we're cleaning. Some disinfectants can be reactivated if they're not dried properly, or if somebody goes in right after the chemicals dry. And we've seen a couple studies in the school systems where they used a chemical. Probably what happened is they didn't let it dry long enough. The students sat in the desk or the chair. The moisture from their pants leg or their dress reactivated the chemical and bleached some of the clothing students were wearing. You can Google it and you can find a good handful of chemicals in schools that have had this issue. What type of disinfectants are there? There's a variety of disinfectants and chemicals out there. Chlorine dioxide is pretty common. Chlorine, bleach is very common also. Silver nitrate, which is banned in the EU. Sodium chloride, fancy name for salt water. Quaternary ammonias. Interesting thing about the quaternary ammonias, they're on the 5th generation. I ask myself, 5th generation, why? Well, obviously the 1st generation didn't do what they wanted. They created a 2nd one, and then maybe there was a different pathogen, so they created a 3rd on whatnot. And you can look that up. There's an article about 5th generation quaternary ammonias. I think it was 2016. Two of my favorite disinfectants that are on the market are hydrogen peroxide and puric acid. What I like about those two disinfectants, they're eco-friendly, meaning they leave no residue or very little residue. Some of them may have a surfactant or a 0.501% of some other chemical in there for binding or other features it may need to have in there. The other reason I like the hydrogen peroxide and the puric acids is 2 reasons. They're considered high-level disinfectant with joint commissions in 2015. You can look that up, which in the hospital is really a big thing. They really get into the weeds about the disinfectants, and they're high-level, medium level, or low level. And in the CDC guidelines in infectious disease control, table 4, I remember that reference because I've gone to it many times. It's 3 of the 5 chemicals used for high-level disinfectant in your hospitals, in your ORs, in the higher level areas. What are the downside to the chemicals you're using? Some of the chemicals you use over time will cause corrosion. They can cause a buildup of germs. If you think of a stainless steel table, I like using this example. Stainless steel is probably one of the best surfaces you can keep clean, just in its nature and the material it's made of. If it is cleaned perfectly, it's really hard for germs and pathogens to latch on and grow or mutate. Now imagine if you're using a chemical that leaves a residue. You clean the disinfectant on the tabletop, you let it dry, there's a residue there. Even if you wipe it, there's still going to be residue unless you go back with water and help clean up that residue that's on there. So with the chemical that you just sprayed or wiped on there and it dries, it's a little rough surface. It's easier for pathogens to attach on and grow and mutate. And there's a lot of studies out there, you can Google it yourself, that sees that some of the chemicals that leave residue, it's much easier for pathogens to grow on them. With the buildup of the chemicals and germs on, you're building up bioburns and the germ. I've seen a lot of places that clean around light switches, doorknobs, around door handles where people may push to open the door open. They clean those areas, but they're using chemicals that usually have a residue. So every time somebody touches the side of the door or the wall, they're transferring pathogens and germs from the hand onto the chemicals that's naturally sticky that are taking the germs off their skins. Some of the disinfectants can discolor or even cause bleaching if not used in the right percentage when you're mixing. One thing I learned, very interesting, a biologist in Florida schooled me on, which I thought was really interesting, that when you take a chemical and you mix it with your water, so 50 states around the United States, you have the same chemical and you use the water in 50 states, you're going to get 50 different outcomes. Why? Because the water that you're adding is not a constant. So in testing, my understanding is they use distilled water because it's a constant. So should you be mixing a chemical with water, distilled water is probably the best solution because that's the constant, and more likely that's probably what they tested it with to be a constant. I thought that was kind of trivia. There are some chemicals that we've seen in avionics and in EMS that have caused corrosion with the radios and the software. And why is that? A lot of the products and metals we get are from overseas. One particular company we get a lot of electronics from, that metal's not very pure. So because it's not very pure, it's not so reactive or non-reactive to chemicals we may put on them. So that causes corrosion prematurely. So the chemicals that you're using, if you're a large office building or corporation or school, university, look at the chemical and look what the compatibility with that chemical is with the product that you're using. Now remember your log kill. A 6 log is by far much better than a 3 log. A 4 log is less effective than a 5 log. And a 3 log would be 99.9. A 6 log would be 99.9999. Hence, 6 nines, a 6 log. So I hope this has been informational. If you have any questions, please see us at pathogen-ga.net. Leave us a message or contact me on any of my social medias. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed it.